homage to Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to Manjushri, homage to all the lineage masters. The supreme, profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Now let us continue our study of the Bodhicharyavatara. At this point in the Bodhicharyavatara, we are discussing the second of the 3 chapters on how to give rise to bodhicitta when it has not yet arisen, which is also called the chapter on confessing misdeeds. Within the chapter on confession, there is a general explanation and a detailed explanation. We begin with the general explanation. In the general explanation, 2 main points are discussed: how to ascertain bodhicitta and how to practice bodhicitta. We have already covered the first point. Now we are discussing how to practice bodhicitta. This is further divided into 3 methods: how to take the vow, how to guard the vow, and how to restore the vow. Within the first method, we have already finished discussing the second point. Now we come to the third point, which is the ritual for taking the vow. Previously, we have discussed that the nature of bodhicitta and its 2 classifications. And then we continue to discuss what kind of objects bodhicitta relies upon in order to be received within one's own mind stream. We also talked about the characteristics of the person, the pujala, who receives the vow. Having covered these points, today we'll continue. If one finds a qualified spiritual teacher, and oneself is also a suitable vessel for generating bodhicitta, if these conditions are met, then we can receive the vow through certain rituals. So what is a ritual? As you know, in the world there are all kinds of ceremonies. When performing ceremonies, there are also different types of rituals. Each ceremony has its own ritual, and it is the same in Buddhism. Many rituals involve visualization and recitation. Here, the question is whether the bodhisattva vow is received through a ritual or without a ritual. This is the issue being discussed. Today, we are talking about the ritual for taking the vow according to Asanga. In the Bodhisattva Bhumi chapter of the Yogacara Bhumi, there is no mention of a ritual for aspirational bodhicitta. In the tradition of vast conduct, the school of Asanga, the Bodhisattva vow, is explained very clearly, but in this context, there is no mention of receiving aspirational bodhicitta through a ritual. No ritual is described. Master Dharmamitra and others also believe that aspirational bodhicitta does not depend on a ritual. Master Dharmamitra, whom we introduced some time ago and whom we often mention when studying the ornament of clear realization, is a very renowned Indian master. In his Mahayana treatises, there is also no mention that aspirational bodhicitta is received through a ritual. In other words, his view is that aspirational bodhicitta is not received through a ritual. Actually, we can understand this through our own experience. Aspirational bodhicitta simply means making a personal aspiration. It is a resolve or a vow made in one's own heart. Such a vow does not necessarily depend on a ritual. Therefore, both Asanga and Master Dharmamitra hold that aspirational bodhicitta is an aspiration made in one's own heart by the practitioner. Therefore, no ritual is introduced here. Lord Atisha composed rituals for both aspirational and engaged bodhicitta in sequence. Lord Atisha's view is somewhat different. He composed in sequence first a ritual for aspirational bodhicitta and then a ritual for engaged bodhicitta. This view is similar to that of the omniscient Longchenpa of the early translation school. You may also remember clearly that omniscient Longchenpa in the Great Chariot also explained the rituals for both aspirational and engaged bodhicitta. This is the same as what is presented here. Of course, here these 2 rituals are not separated. There is a single ritual, and both can be received through it. One can receive aspirational and engaged bodhicitta either sequentially or simultaneously. This treatise, according to the view of the Bodhicharyavatara commentary, is explained from the perspective of an excellent pujala who can receive both aspirational and engaged bodhicitta simultaneously through a single ritual. In the Bodhicharyavatara, according to the Bodhicharyavatara commentary composed by Indian masters, this is the perspective taken. Aspirational and engaged bodhicitta are received through a single ritual. This ritual is performed at the same time, meaning that both aspirational and engaged bodhicitta are received at the same time. This way of receiving bodhisattva vow is for those with an excellent spiritual disposition. In other words, it is established from the perspective of an exceptional practitioner. If one's spiritual capacity is not particularly excellent, lacking wisdom or compassion, such a person may not be able to receive both aspirational and engaged bodhicitta at the same time. For ordinary capacity, one first receives aspirational bodhicitta and then receives engaged bodhicitta. This is the sequence. So why is it explained this way in this treatise? According to the Bodhicharyavatara commentary, this ritual is established for an especially excellent Pujjala. This is the correct way to interpret it. Nagpawa said, aspirational bodhicitta is the generation of the mind. Engaged bodhicitta is the bodhisattva vow. Sometimes many people also wonder, if I generate bodhicitta, does that mean I have already received the bodhisattva vow? Many people may have this doubt. Some people say, I have already received the bodhisattva vow. But does that mean I have generated bodhicitta? There are such doubts. But we can answer this according to Nagpawa's view. If we silently make a vow in our hearts, this is called generating the mind. But this does not necessarily mean one has received the bodhisattva vow. If I receive engaged bodhicitta, then I have truly received the bodhisattva vow. So sometimes some may wonder, is the bodhisattva vow the same as generating the mind? We should answer that if one has received the bodhisattva vow, one has definitely generated the mind. But if one has generated the mind, it does not necessarily mean one has received the bodhisattva vow. If I have only generated aspirational bodhicitta, I may not have received the bodhisattva vow. This is also what Nagpawa says, and he believes that this treatise explains both sequential and simultaneous methods for receiving aspirational and engaged bodhicitta. Tokme Zangpo believes that the Bodhicharyavatara has already explained the methods for receiving aspirational and engaged bodhicitta in sequence, as well as the method for receiving them simultaneously. Nagpawa also believes that in the Bodhicharyavatara, they mention two types of methods. Those with lesser capacity first receive aspirational bodhicitta and then engaged bodhicitta, and those with greater capacity, they receive both at the same time. This is his view. Regarding the views of Prajnakaramati and other Indian masters, Asanga in this context explained these points very clearly and analyzed them in great detail. Prajnakaramati and others also believe that aspirational bodhicitta is the generation of the mind and engaged bodhicitta is the bodhisattva vow. This is the same as the view of Nagpawa mentioned earlier. From this perspective, when we make an aspiration in our hearts, but do not actually do anything in practice, though it is still meritorious to make the aspiration, but compared to truly practicing engaged bodhicitta and the bodhisattva vow, one has not yet formally received the bodhisattva vow. Therefore, we should understand that if we only make an aspiration in our hearts thinking, I have already made the aspiration, I am already practicing, but in actual conduct, regarding sentient beings, we do nothing and do not even think about it, then we do not actually do anything in practice. Or if we only talk about it, just speaking empty words, and do not take any action at all, can we be considered as truly having received the bodhisattva vow? From the views above, it would be more accurate to say, not yet. Why is that? Some people may speak very beautifully about these aspirations, but in practice, they might not put any of their aspirations into action. If we haven't yet acted on our aspirations, it simply means we are still on the journey toward truly practicing the path of bodhicitta. Therefore, I really hope that you will practice every morning. Of course, if it is not possible every morning, then each day you should check your daily schedule and see how you arrange your time. If you cannot even spare half an hour, I don't think you'd be like that, would you? Therefore, do not forget your practice. You should always put these aspirations in your hearts. Of course, when you are in the process of practicing, you may not always act in practice right away. Anyway, after having generated aspirational bodhicitta, then you must do something in actual conduct. Whatever you do is fine. After making the aspiration in the morning, throughout the day, depending on which sentient beings you encounter, or even if you do not encounter any, do something truly for the sake of sentient beings. Some people may only make aspirations in their hearts and speak very well, but if we only make aspirations in our hearts and do not yet put them into practice, it may not be enough. I hope that you, for example, even if it is just encouraging others to study the Bodhicharyavatara and telling others about its benefits sometimes, saying, studying the Bodhicharyavatara will benefit your mind stream, or it will help your life. Just this bit of sharing is also good. Whether or not they will accept your advice is not the most important thing. The point is that you have actually done something for sentient beings. Or, for example, as we are now promoting the Bodhicharyavatara, using various methods to encourage everyone to study it. And in this process, we have formed some small groups. Some group members distribute materials or VCDS to others. In this process, you may spend some of your own time or forgo a little personal leisure time, but all your effort is for the benefit of others, so your work for sentient beings. To save sentient beings does not mean that all beings are immediately liberated from the ocean of samsaric suffering. For us as ordinary people, that is a not-so-easy thing. So it is not enough to just think about it in your heart. In your daily life, observe the things that you're doing, whether it is for yourself or for sentient beings. As long as it is for sentient beings, any kind of action is fine. It does not matter whether others know about it or not. This is what is called genuine action. It is not just empty talk. What matters is that your actions bring some real benefit, however small. Only in this way our practice can become truly meaningful and beneficial. I also hope this time that as you study the Bodhicharyavatara, please keep this in mind, first and foremost, to begin well and finish well without giving up halfway. It would be even more unfortunate if the transmission were interrupted partway through. At the same time, I hope that your participation is genuine. Yesterday I checked the numbers and felt a bit uncertain. In some places, there are so many people signed up, but it's not always clear who is truly studying and who is not. This time, I sincerely hope that your participation is authentic. There's really no need for inflated numbers or false reports. I put a lot of effort into this, and it's not meaningful if some just pretend to learn. For those who truly wish to study, I hope the study groups can all support them. For those who are genuinely committed, please do register, and within the set time frame, do your best to study the teachings for this term. It's important to complete this task. Without a little pressure, it's hard to find motivation for any kind of study, and without motivation, it's difficult to see results. There may be a few exceptions, but for most of you, it's best if we can gather together and focus during the scheduled times. If you don't come together, then individual study can be quite challenging. Some people, such as government officials, may find it inconvenient, or some people have personalities that make it hard to get along with others, and for those who are especially solitary, there's not much we can do except wish them well. But for everyone else, it's best to come together and discuss with fellow Buddhists. That way, we can really make progress. As you know, whether it's Buddhist knowledge or worldly knowledge, in general, learning and growth happen best in a group setting. That's why in every country, education is organized through schools. This is the reason why all over the world people are educated in schools. It's because learning and growth are fostered in a group environment. Of course, some people may have more concerns. I see that among those who signed up for studying, there are quite a few from monasteries. I've looked at some of the lists. This is really wonderful. For those in monasteries, if you don't engage in study and reflection, it's not ideal to enjoy the offerings of the 3 jewels. It's important to engage in study for yourself. There are also Dharma friends from Buddhist colleges, as well as university teachers and students, and people from all walks of life in society are also participating. Some of you may have concerns. Perhaps you worry that your teacher or someone else or even government officials might find out. So some people always feel the need to hide their participation. However, I think, from both a worldly and a spiritual perspective, studying Mahayana Buddhism is a positive thing. There's no need to be so secretive. It's not as if you're doing anything wrong or harmful. It's not like you're gambling or doing anything bad. If in those cases, if those actions are found out, then that is something should be ashamed of or worried about. But here, among us, I know many government officials, people who are outstanding in both position and wisdom, are also participated. I think it's best to be open and straightforward about your studies. Studying the Dharma, especially Mahayana Buddhism, can have incredible benefits for society, for families, and for individuals. It can have truly remarkable effects. After all, what we are learning is compassion, loving kindness, and wisdom. From this perspective, These are the very values that are promoted in societies around the world today, such as harmonious societies, national prosperity, and world peace, and so on. When these ideals are combined with Buddhist principles, their deeper meaning can truly be realized. But some still have mindsets from the 1950s, 60s, or 70s and 80s, and always feel that only studying quietly by oneself is the most acceptable way. But in fact, that's not the case. Nowadays, around the world, there is much more openness and cultural exchange. There is a spirit of openness and new possibilities. So, when it comes to studying Mahayana Buddhism, I feel that whether you are a spiritual teacher, a monastic, or a layperson, it's good to be open-minded. At first, some people may not understand your choices, but over time, they will come to understand. As we study the Bodhicharyavatara, there is no conflict with any laws, regulations, or policies, not in the slightest, nor does it go against family life or social values. There is nothing in it that contradicts anything. In fact, it only helps you become a better and more complete person. If we don't study these Buddhist values, or if someone deliberately tries to suppress them, I think that's actually a bit unfortunate. I hope everyone will reflect deeply. Sometimes it seems that people in the world think and do so much, and yet when you look closely, many things really lack essential meaning. Often, there's nothing to worry about, but we end up creating so many worries for ourselves, and in the end, we just make ourselves unhappy. Not long ago, there was a news story about a couple. The husband started his daydreaming. He thought to himself, if I make over 5 million in business, how will I use the money? He told his wife, if I make over 5 million, I'll start a company, hire a good secretary, and give some to my parents. He explained in great detail how he planned to distribute his money. His wife said, if you really make 5 million, you should also give some to my family. I also have my parents. They started arguing about how to divide the money. The argument went on, and eventually they even talked about divorce. They accused each other of being irresponsible, and so on. Finally, they went to court, and the judge asked, have you actually made 5 million yet? The husband and the wife said, no, not yet. The judge said, well, let's talk about it if you ever do. They then realized how silly the whole thing was and went home. So sometimes when we do things, even before we started, we already create so many knots in our own minds, worrying about things that may never happen. And in the end, we just make ourselves anxious and unhappy. This kind of situation is very common. So I hope that all of you who are studying the Bodhicharyavatara as Mahayana practitioners can ask yourselves each day whether you are doing something, even a small thing, for the benefit of others. Even a little bit is good. For example, in the morning you practice bodhicitta, maybe for half an hour, then throughout the day, apart from your own affairs. In fact, from beginningless time until now, we have always been striving for our own lives. Basically, every day, 24 hours, we are all working and thinking for our own families and ourselves. Now, after generating bodhicitta to dedicate all our time to others, except for a few great masters or those with strong altruism, this may be a bit difficult, but I think if we can do even a little something for others each day, not just in words, but in actual deeds, that is what is meant by practicing engaged bodhicitta. Reading the ritual of aspirational bodhicitta, many masters have shared different views, but in essence, what is being discussed here is the difference between our inner intentions and what we do in our actions. Although there are many different opinions, here I am just offering a brief analysis. In fact, aspirational bodhicitta does not arise from a ritual, and it is indeed possible that one may generate aspirational bodhicitta without relying on ritual. Here it is explained that aspirational bodhicitta does not arise from a ritual, nor does it necessarily become the bodhisattva vow. Does this kind of situation exist? Yes, it certainly does. It's like when we think in our hearts, I want to go to Lhasa, but in reality, we don't take any action. In the same way, if there is no ritual at all, but only generating the mind, can this still be considered generating aspirational bodhicitta? Yes, it can. But the following case is different. Many people would say, you don't need to formally take refuge. Just thinking about it in your heart is enough. All these ceremonies are unnecessary. There's no need for them. As long as you have faith in the Buddha in your heart, that's enough. So too, to generate bodhicitta, there's no need for any ritual. All of these are unnecessary. As long as you have a kind heart, that's enough. But actually, This is a misunderstanding. Why is that? While it's true that you may have this intention in your heart, is it complete? No, it's not complete. Can you be considered a true Buddhist? Not quite yet. So when does it truly count? Only when you have performed the ritual. After going through the ritual, you can then be considered a true Buddhist. I once met someone who said, I don't really accept all these Buddhist rituals and ceremonies, but I do believe that good deeds bring good results, bad deeds bring bad results, and I accept taking refuge in the 3 jewels, but I never want to actually perform any rituals. So I joked with him, in the same way, in your life, when you get married, you don't need a wedding ceremony either. As long as you feel happy with your partner, that's enough. If your relationship breaks down, there's no need for divorce procedures either, since you don't place importance on any ceremonies or value any rituals. He thought about it and didn't really have an answer for me. In fact, these kinds of ceremonies or rituals do have their significance. Some people feel that certain Buddhist rituals are unnecessary. If you think rituals are unnecessary, then there are many things in the world that could also be considered unnecessary. For example, when a company opens, there is usually an opening ceremony. When a monastery is built, there is a foundation laying ceremony. From the ultimate perspective, these ceremonies are empty in nature. So are these things unnecessary? But from a conventional perspective, for example, before a company officially opens, you may feel that it hasn't officially started yet, so it doesn't have any real effect. But only after the opening, it then starts operating in an orderly and official way. In the same way, Buddhist rituals should not be seen as meaningless. It's not just about having a kind heart. There's more to it than that. So, as the question I asked above, it is worth analyzing from different angles. There may be some points that are worth reflecting on. However, it is also not contradictory for aspirational bodhicitta to arise through a ritual. So, if aspirational bodhicitta arises through a ritual, there is nothing contradictory either. If, through a ritual before attaining enlightenment, before attaining Buddhahood, one develops a mind that is completely free from harming others and resolves, until I attain Buddhahood, I will never harm sentient beings again, and I will do my best to help them, then this is considered the Bodhisattva vow. So, as mentioned earlier, aspirational bodhicitta without a ritual does exist, but there is also aspirational bodhicitta that arises through a ritual. Is there such a thing as aspirational bodhicitta arising through a ritual? Yes, there is. So, this text says, when one has developed a mind that abandons wrongdoing, this is called the perfection of discipline. When in your own mind stream you have developed the resolve to abandon all negative actions, at that moment you have attained the perfection of discipline. Because in essence, the nature of discipline is the resolve in your heart to abandon wrongdoing. Sometimes this is done with a ritual, sometimes without. It can arise through a ritual. It's like when we enroll in school. After registering, the teachers and the school officially recognize you, and you become a member of the school. From then on, you are part of that school. In the same way, by relying on a ritual, when you truly generate bodhicitta in your own mind stream, from that moment on, you are a person with Mahayana disposition. If you think all these rituals are unnecessary, then when you go to school, registering and all the procedures are also unnecessary. They would be pointless, and you could just think, I want to study hard, and that would be enough. But would that really work? No, it wouldn't. Some people really don't know much about Buddhism, and when you hear their reasoning, it can sound quite amusing. It's the same here. Of course, engaged bodhicitta is definitely included within the bodhisattva vow, and whether one receives aspirational and engaged bodhicitta sequentially or simultaneously, both are acceptable. If you receive both aspirational and engaged bodhicitta at the same time, that's fine too. For those with sharp faculties, this is possible. For those with less capacity, it's also fine to first receive aspirational bodhicitta and then engaged bodhicitta. There's nothing wrong with that either, because both methods of receiving the vow are found in the sutras and commentaries, and there is no logical contradiction. What does logical contradiction mean? If we accept this, there is no harm from a logical point of view. This is a technical term in Buddhism, and everyone should remember it. When studying the middle way or Buddhist logic, we ask whether there is any logical contradiction. This means, is it logically untenable? That's what is meant by a logical contradiction. For example, if we say fire is not hot, then whether by valid direct perception or valid inference, there would be logical contradiction and refutation by reasoning. But if we accept that fire is hot in conventional terms, then there is no logical contradiction. So everyone should remember this term. In fact, there are many different ways to receive the vow, but here, according to this text, it is received through the preparatory practices, the main practice, and the concluding practice. Of course, there are many ways to receive the Bodhisattva vow, according to Nagarjuna, Asanga, Lord Atisha, and so on. There are many different methods. Many methods exist in both Tibetan Buddhism and Chinese Buddhism, but according to the method in the Bodhicharya Avatara, first, in the preparatory stage, we practice the 7 branches to purify the negative karma in our mind stream and to accumulate merit. Then, in the main practice, we formally take the vow through a ritual. Finally, in the concluding practice, we cultivate joy for ourselves and others. This is how the process is completed. This is the method for taking the vow, and everyone should remember it. Because in this section, we haven't covered a lot of content, but it is very important. If we want to fully understand the entire path of the Bodhisattva, the material covered in these 2 classes is especially crucial. That concludes the first main point. Now the second main point. Since we have already received the Bodhisattva vow in our mind stream, once we have received the Bodhisattva vow, it's like the example we used yesterday. After buying an air conditioner and installing it at home, it's already in your house and set up. So how do we take care of it from now on? If you don't maintain it, it could break down in just a few days. After spending so much money, that would be a real pity. In the same way, now that we have the Bodhisattva vow in our own mind stream, what should we do to protect it? How do we safeguard this vow? That's what we'll discuss now. Second, the method of guarding the vow and practice all the trainings. Regarding what should be abandoned, the way to protect the vow is to learn everything that should be learned and to abandon everything that should be abandoned. This is how we protect the vow. Once you have taken the vow, for example, in the Pratimoksha vows of the Hinayana, if you have taken the vow of a bhikshu or bhikshuni, or the vow of a female practitioner or a male practitioner, you should have the 5 lay vows in your mind stream, or the vow of a bhikshu. And you must first clearly understand the precepts. Once you understand them, you need to protect them one by one. If you don't, even if you have taken the vow, it can be broken very quickly. So it is essential to rely on mindfulness and vigilance to protect the vow. We must practice all the trainings. Here, trainings refers to the precepts of the Bodhisattva vow. These precepts are sometimes called trainings. For example, in the Pratimoksha vows, the precepts are called restraints. In the Bodhisattva vow, they are called trainings. In the Tantric vows, they are called samaya. Although the terms are different, the meaning is essentially the same. They all refer to precepts. Bodhisattva precepts, Pratimoksha precepts, Tantric precepts. The only difference is in the terminology, but in essence, they are all precepts. So some of these technical terms are worth remembering. Now, regarding what should be abandoned, there are a number of precepts to be given up. In the Bodhisattva Bhumi chapter of the Yogacara Bhumi, it is taught that there are 4 defeats and 45 auxiliary faults. Actually, it's 46, but the Tibetan text here also says 45. Maybe it's a typo or something. Let's look into it later. According to Asanga, the Indian master, all the Bodhisattva vows can be included within the 4 defeats. If we commit any of these 4 defeats, we have actually broken the Bodhisattva vow. This is the view of Asanga in the Mahayana tradition. In the Bodhisattva Bhumi chapter of the Yogacara Bhumi, it is also explained, for example, the first one, out of attachment, praising oneself and criticizing others, for the sake of gain and honor, praising oneself and disparaging others. This is the first one, and it's easy to commit. In daily life, we often become attached to our sponsors or possessions. and then say, this teacher is not good, that Dharma friend is not good. In fact, others may not have such faults, but we keep criticizing them anyway. So the first defeat is praising oneself and criticizing others out of attachment. The second is out of miserliness, failing to give Dharma or material gifts. Because of stinginess, when you encounter beggars or beings in need, you are unwilling to give at all. Or when you meet someone who is truly a suitable vessel, you withhold important Dharma teachings from them. Not giving Dharma is the second defeat. The third is harming others out of anger. Harming or slandering others out of anger, and when others come to confess to you, you are unwilling to accept their confession at all. This is the third defeat, and it's also easy to commit. Sometimes, for example, when we see beggars on the street asking for money, even though we have money, if we don't give, we have actually broken the Bodhisattva vow. Especially for some Dharma friends, when on the street, the first beggar gets a dime, the second gets 5 cents, and by the third, you start to feel annoyed. When several beggars come, you get really unhappy. You say, go away, go away, go away. At such times as someone who has generated bodhicitta and holds the bodhisattva vow, you should try to give something. If you don't, you are breaking the bodhisattva vow. It's easy to break these precepts. For example, some people are truly suitable vessels and are eager for the Dharma, but when they come to you and ask, could you please teach me some Dharma, even though you know they are a suitable vessel, you don't teach them. You say, I'm busy, I don't have time, and I don't want to teach. Such an attitude is actually quite risky. So these precepts are actually quite easy to break. As we said, the third defeat is harming others out of anger. When others feel they have done wrong and come to confess, if you refuse to accept their confession for days or often, saying, I don't care what you do, and never accept their confession, you are breaking the bodhisattva vow. The fourth is, due to ignorance and lack of understanding, abandoning the teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni, and then creating your own false or misleading teachings instead. These are not genuine Dharma teachings, but you claim, for example, this Qigong I teach is so beneficial for sentient beings. In this way, you abandon the authentic teachings and practices and establish false teachings. This is also breaking the Bodhisattva vow. So, these four defeats, as we have learnt before, as explained clearly in the ascertainment of the three types of vows. I hope you will at least try to uphold these four precepts according to the tradition of vast conduct. At the very least, see if you can keep these four precepts. If you break them, the Bodhisattva vow is different from other vows. Like it can be restored. So you can receive the vow again. But this is a little different from Nagarjuna's view. For example, according to Asanga, if you break the Bodhisattva vow, if you break a root vow, you can restore it up to 3 times. After 3 times, you cannot restore it again. This is similar to some of the Pratimoksha vows. According to Nagarjuna, if you break a root downfall of the Bodhisattva vow, you can restore it repeatedly. So this is called a defeat. We usually call it a root downfall. For example, in the Hinayana, a bhikshu has 4 root vows, 4 defeats. A bhikshuni has 8 defeats. Regarding the term defeats, it is explained in the Sutra of Individual Liberation. The Buddha told the bhikshus for the 4 defeats, if they commit any of these 4, from that moment on, the bhikshu is defeated by the offense. He has been completely defeated. So this is the reason why it is called defeats. Therefore, such a bhikshu cannot live with the Sangha, nor enjoy the property of the Sangha, and must be expelled. So defeat here means that the person and the negative karma are like 2 sides in a battle, and in the end the person is completely defeated by the power of the offense. The offense has triumphed, so this is called a defeat. We have discussed this before when studying the precepts, so it should be clear for everyone about the meaning of defeats. The 4 defeats of the Bodhisattva vow are explained here according to Asanga. There are also 46 faults. I won't go into detail about the 46 faults here. I hope you will look them up. They are listed in the ascertainment of the 3 types of vows as the 46 auxiliary faults, or in the 20 verses on the Bodhisattva vow by Chandra Gomin. The 20 verses on the Bodhisattva vow also explains them clearly. So, whether it's 45 or 46, these are the auxiliary faults. The term auxiliary faults is also a technical term in the context of precepts. What does auxiliary fault mean? It means that one has not broken a root vow, but has still committed some minor infractions or small misdeeds. This is what is called an auxiliary fault. In your mind stream, this has planted the habitual tendencies and seeds of negative karma. That's why it's called an auxiliary fault. This is also a technical term. Next, we'll discuss what is taught in the Akashagarbha Sutra. Earlier, we discussed the view of Asanga. Now, we'll look at the view of Nagarjuna. This is Nagarjuna's perspective. Its source in the sutras is the Akashagarbha Sutra. The 14 precepts taught in the Akashagarbha Sutra are summarized in the Compendium of Training. The Akashagarbha Sutra contains 14 precepts, which are summarized in verse form in Shantideva's Compendium of Training. There is such a verse in the Compendium of Training. It is presented in the form of a verse. This is a verse we have studied before. There are 5 fixed offenses that kings are prone to, 5 that ministers are prone to, and 8 that ordinary people are prone to, 18 in total. First, the 5 precepts that kings are likely to break. Stealing the property of the 3 jewels is said to be a defeat. This is the first one. That is, to seize or forcibly take the property of the 3 jewels. This is the first defeat that breaks the Bodhisattva vow. If we use various means to misappropriate the property of the 3 jewels, and sometimes probably we may. For example, if we treat Buddha images or scriptures as commodities for sale and personally profit from the money earned, using it for ourselves rather than for Dharma activities and not for benefiting others, then this is also considered a kind of transgression. It is considered stealing the property of the 3 jewels. This is the first one. Abandoning the profound Dharma, the Buddha said, is the second. The second is the offense of abandoning the Dharma. This means that if we consider the teachings of the Buddha to be unreasonable and completely reject them, whether it is Mahayana or Hinayana, if you think it is not the Buddha's teaching and abandon it, that is the second offense. So we must be careful about this. Abandoning the Dharma, whether Mahayana or Hinayana, is an offense. If you abandon Mahayana teachings, it is an offense. If you abandon Hinayana teachings, it is an offense. It is also an offense. Nowadays, some Dharma teachers and lay practitioners, because they only follow their own tradition, may criticize other traditions they have never studied, saying things like, Vajrayana is not real Buddhism. But in fact, if you haven't studied it, how can you know it's not the Buddha's teaching? So this is a very mistaken view. Some people, if they follow Mahayana, may say Theravada Buddhism is not real Buddhism, or it's not the pure teaching of Buddha Shakyamuni, and so on. To criticize the Dharma in this way is a serious mistake. You have already broken the Bodhisattva vow, but may not even realize it. This is truly unfortunate. It's really important to understand the precepts first. If you don't understand the precepts, even if you have taken the Bodhisattva vow, you may not even know when you have broken it. This is the second precept. Please pay attention to it. Some precepts are really easy to break, while others are not so easy to break in our current context. This is the explanation of the second precept. To beat or rob the robes of a monk who has broken precepts, imprison a monk, force a monk to return to lay life, or even sentence a monk to death, this is the third. This is the third precept. Whether a monk has broken precepts or not, to intentionally or unintentionally beat, harm, or abuse them, to harm or mistreat them in various ways, or to take away their robes and monastic robes, or even to imprison them, to force them to return to lay life, or even to sentence them to death. Anyone who does this has broken the Bodhisattva vow. If they have taken the Bodhisattva vow, they have broken it. This precept, I think for us, it is not easy to break for either monastics or lay people. But during the Cultural Revolution, this kind of thing happened often. Some who had taken the Bodhisattva vow later became leaders and deliberately imprisoned all the monastics or forced them to return to lay life and took away their robes. This did happen. But in today's society, it's very unlikely that monastics would be forced to engage in or do improper things. However, sometimes among lay practitioners, some have taken the Bodhisattva vow, but through various means or ways, they cause monastics to return to lay life. And in doing so, they also break the Bodhisattva vow. This is something to be very mindful of, because in many Chinese Buddhist communities today, Sometimes the respect shown to monastics is not always in accordance with the Dharma. In such situations, sometimes when both sides act out of their ordinary habits, many unpleasant things can end up happening. In these cases, if someone's improper actions cause a monastic to return to lay life, if this happens, then one has broken the Bodhisattva vow. This is very serious. Causing others to break their pratimoksha vows leads to their long-lasting suffering, and one may not even realize that one has broken the Bodhisattva vow. Thinking that one is somehow special, some people may believe that it is a genuine and special practice, or a special method in Vajrayana, or that it is the Guru's skillful means to help them, but in reality, this is not the case. Often, it is just one's own conceptual mind and attachment which leads to breaking the precepts. But after breaking the precepts, one may not even realize it, and when regret finally comes, it may be too late. There was once a monk from Sershul who came from Sotar. He said he often dreamed that Guru Rinpoche gave him prophecies. Sometimes in his dreams he would visit Guru Rinpoche's Pure Land and was told, if you form a consort relationship with a woman nearby, if you take her as a consort, you will be reborn in a Pure Land. He often had such dreams and prophecies. He believed them and returned to lay life. Yet after returning to lay life, those dreams never came again. After he gave up the vow, such dreams never happened again. Later, at a Dharma gathering in Sershul, Popatulku and other monks, when they were performing rituals together, Popatulku and the others wore monastic robes, but this man wore a layperson's chuba, a very tattered one, and he kept crying. His chuba was very worn out. He kept crying and could not stop. Popatulku then asked him why. He said, I have encountered great obstacles in my practice. I used to think those dreams were real, but after I returned to lay life, I never had such dreams again. When he saw the dignified presence of the monastics, he kept crying sadly. Many of our lamas of the past had also told such stories. So some people think they are practicing some special Vajrayana method or some skillful practice, but in fact it is not the case. Even if you have certain dreams or daytime visions, it may just be the tricks of the Mara or demon appearing as Guru Rinpoche or another form, giving you a prophecy saying, if you do this, it will improve your practice. But if you really break the precepts, if you truly abandon your precepts, for example, the precepts of individual liberation from then on, you have lost all possibility of any accomplishment. And at that point, everything in this and future lives is ruined. So I sincerely hope, if you are relating to others with ordinary worldly feelings as ordinary people, that's understandable. But please don't confuse genuine Dharma with worldly thoughts and desire. If you mix them up, thinking it is Dharma practice, it is actually not related to the Dharma at all. You are just deceiving yourself with your own conceptual mind. So about this kind of situation, I think in the process of holding the Bodhisattva vow, everyone really needs to pay attention to this. So the third precept refers to harming monastics. Committing the 5 crimes with immediate retribution, this is the fourth precept. The 5 crimes with immediate retribution are killing one's father, killing one's mother, killing an arhat, creating a schism in the Sangha, and maliciously drawing blood from the body of a Tathagata. These 5 are called the 5 crimes with immediate retribution. Of course, for most of us, these are not easy to commit. For example, to actually kill one's own father, like King Ajatashatru in the past, this is extremely rare. Or as recorded in the Sutra, as in the story of Udayana, killing one's mother like him is also extremely rare. There are such stories in Buddhist texts. For example, the story of King Ajatashatru killing his father is also found in the letter to a friend. The story of Udayana killing his mother is told in the Vinaya. Udayana met a woman and he was deeply in love with her, but his mother repeatedly refused to let him go to her. His mother kept telling him again and again not to go there. But he just wouldn't listen. So his mother would sleep at his door every night to prevent him from leaving. One night, he became very angry, drew his sword, and killed his mother. After killing his mother, he ran right away to the woman's house. When he arrived, he thought to himself, I killed my own mother for her. She should be very happy. He thought she would be delighted, but since he had just killed his mother, his heart was pounding and he was extremely anxious and nervous. Then the woman noticed and asked him, Why is your heart beating so fast? Why are you so nervous? At this time, he told her, It is because I just killed my own mother for you. He thought she would be happy, but instead she was terrified and thought, this person is truly dangerous. If he can kill his own mother, he could certainly harm me. She thought, he won't hesitate to harm me too. She said, you're really something. Just wait here a moment. I'll be right back. Please be patient. She went up to the roof and shouted, help! There's a criminal here. Help! Someone has done something terrible. This story is found in the Vinaya. Hearing her shouting, the man was so frightened that he ran back home. He ran back to his mother's body, put his sword down, and then climbed onto the roof himself and shouted, help! My mother has been killed. He cried out for help as well. The outcome of this story is not clearly explained in the texts, so we do not know what happened in the end, but such cases of killing one's mother do exist. There are also cases of killing an arhat or creating a schism in the Sangha. Nowadays, truly creating a schism in the Sangha only happened during the Buddha's time. It doesn't really occur now. But in general, for example, if two Sangha communities are not united and people say different things to different teachers or say things to other teachers or create discord and conflict among Sangha members, causing relationships to break down, this happens quite often. Especially among the lay communities, some lay practitioners often gossip and spread rumors and spread all kinds of rumors and gossip, causing a lot of division among monastics and Sangha communities. It basically amounts to committing one of the 5 crimes with immediate retribution, so everyone should be very mindful. All Sangha communities, whether Tibetan or Chinese Buddhism, all monastics are followers of Buddha Shakyamuni. There is no need for division or conflict. It is not reasonable. As for maliciously drawing blood from the body of a Tathagata, since the Buddha is no longer in this world, this kind of offense cannot actually occur. However, if you disrespect Buddhist scriptures or images and destroy them out of anger, this is also close to committing one of the 5 crimes with immediate retribution. If we do such things, we are coming close to breaking this precept. So this is something to be mindful of. This is the 4th precept. Now the 5th precept, holding wrong views. For example, denying that good deeds bring good results and bad deeds bring bad results, or denying the existence of past and future lives. If you believe none of these exist, that is called holding wrong views. This concludes the section on kings. Because kings have great power, they often punish monastics, so these offenses are easier for them to commit. This concludes the 5 fixed offenses for kings. For ministers, in addition to the previous 4, destroying cities and towns is also considered a root offense. These are the 5 fixed offenses for ministers. So in addition to the previous 4, the 5th for ministers is destroying cities and towns. That is, adding the offense of destroying cities to the previous 4. Destroying states, cities or towns, because ministers under the orders of the king, they would often go to cities and cause destruction. If one breaks this precept, it is also a violation of the Bodhisattva vow. So these 5 are the precepts that ministers are most likely to break. These are the 5 fixed offenses for ministers. Next, we discuss the 8 precepts that ordinary people are likely to break. Teaching emptiness to those whose minds are not yet mature. This is the first one. Teaching emptiness to those whose minds are not yet mature or who have an indeterminate disposition. For those who don't even understand refuge, it is not proper to say, I studied the middle way very well before, and shall I teach you the root verses on the wisdom of the middle way? Shall I teach you the most profound dzogchen? Shall I give you an empowerment and the most profound teachings on emptiness? Sometimes when the other person is not at all ready, I wonder if giving empowerment in such cases would break the bodhisattva vow, because the other person doesn't even know what Vajrayana is, or what it means to take refuge or generate bodhicitta. And yet, some offer them a vase and say, shall I give you an empowerment? Would this break the precept? Of course, this is not mentioned in other sutras or commentaries, but it's something to think about and reflect on. Causing Buddhists to turn away from complete enlightenment. This is the second one. This means causing other Buddhist practitioners who have already entered the Mahayana path to give up their path. Do not say things like, oh, there's no point in studying the Mahayana or the Bodhisattva path. You should study the Hinayana instead. Mahayana Buddhism is very difficult. It takes countless lifetimes of generosity and discipline. How troublesome. Or you should study the Hinayana, not Tibetan Buddhism. Or just recite Amitabha Buddha's name, that's enough. Don't study anything else, just recite Amitabha. Just recite Amitabha Buddha's name, that's enough. But sentient beings have all kinds of dispositions. If just reciting one phrase solved everything, the Buddha wouldn't have needed to teach 84,000 dharmas. We also wouldn't say that everyone must study Vajrayana. We can't say these things. Some study Mahayana, some study Hinayana, and some study various Dharma paths. So insisting that others must only study one way is very risky. Saying, don't study that, you must study mine, is very problematic. Could this break the Bodhisattva vow? It's something to consider. That's the second one. Now the third, abandoning completely the Pratimoksha vows to practice Mahayana. Some people originally keep the Pratimoksha vows very well in the Hinayana tradition. If you are speaking to someone with a Hinayana disposition, unless there is a special reason, of course, and unless they themselves are not really of Hinayana disposition and can be guided toward Mahayana, then it's fine to explain the benefits of Mahayana and help them gradually enter the Mahayana path. But if someone is clearly of Hinayana disposition and cannot accept Mahayana teachings, and you insist that they abandon their Hinayana vows and practices, you force them to give up their Hinayana path and insist that they must enter the Mahayana so that they end up abandoning the Hinayana and entering the Mahayana. This is also very risky. So we should not force others too much. Don't insist that everyone must study the Bodhicharyavatara if their disposition is not yet mature, or say that their previous practices are not good. To force others who are not ready may not be helpful. It's best to allow freedom in what kind of Dharma people study. If someone really doesn't want to study, there's no need to force them. But we can encourage them and explain the benefits. There's no need for them to abandon their original tradition or precepts. So please pay attention to this. This is the third precept. The fourth precept, upholding Hinayana views and practices, claiming they cannot eliminate attachment and encouraging others to do the same. Some people strictly adhere to Hinayana precepts and views, and in front of such a person, if you say, you shouldn't study the Hinayana because the Hinayana precepts or teachings cannot eliminate afflictions in one's own mind stream, so you must enter the Mahayana and uphold those teachings instead, then you yourself also abandon all Hinayana teachings and only practice Mahayana teachings, and you also encourage others to abandon the Hinayana. This is also a violation of the Bodhisattva vow. That is the fourth precept. The fifth, praising one's own qualities, seeking gain and respect, and criticizing others. Even if one has no real qualities, yet one might boast, I am so remarkable, I have attained realization. Maybe not claiming realization, but saying, my qualities are so great. Even without any real qualities, one boasts in front of others and exaggerates, and out of jealousy, seeking gain and respect, so one criticizes others out of jealousy, pointing out their faults. Nowadays, whether among monastics or lay people, people often like to talk about others' faults, whether they have them or not. This is something to be mindful of. Negative speech is very harmful. When we visit some lay communities, we often hear a lot of gossip and rumors being spread around. This teacher is not good, that lay person is not good, and some people speak as if everyone but themselves is bad. Does this break the Bodhisattva vow? Yes, it does. In such speech and expressions, there is often a strong element of self-praise and criticizing others. So we must be careful in our speech. This is the fifth precept. Now, the sixth, claiming to have profound realization, but speaking falsely. The meaning is that even though you know you have not attained great realization, you still boast, I am enlightened, I have realized the profound nature of reality, I have attained the path of accumulation, the first or even the eighth bodhisattva ground, and so on. To boast in this way and speak great lies or falsehoods is the sixth precept. Now let us look at the seventh, causing harm to monastics, using the property of the three jewels for bribery or accepting bribes. This is the seventh precept. It means punishing or harming those monastic people, to scold or criticize monastics, or use divisive speech to influence those in power to punish or harm monastics, and then using the property of the three jewels for bribery or accepting bribes, or giving bribes to those who cause division or have power. If any of these three, those in power, those who cause division, or the monastics, have taken the Bodhisattva vow, then all three have broken the Bodhisattva vow. For example, if someone in power is persuaded by divisive speech to punish monastics, after being persuaded, influenced by wrong speech, he uses his power to punish them. If all three have taken the Bodhisattva vow, then all three have lost their vows. That is the seventh precept. The eighth, forcing those in retreat to leave their place of solitude or misusing resources meant for practitioners or scholars. This means not allowing someone who is living in retreat to stay there, telling them they cannot stay in the monastery or temple, and forcing them to leave for the city. If there is no special reason, making them leave is not right. Also, using resources meant for scholars to support practitioners, or using resources meant for practitioners to support scholars or reciters, can also easily break the Bodhisattva vow. These are the root offenses, the cause of falling into the great hells. These are the 8 root offenses for ordinary people. According to this, kings and ministers have 10 fixed offenses and beginners have 8 fixed offenses. So there are 18 precepts in total. If you add abandoning aspirational bodhicitta, there are 19 bodhisattva downfalls in total. If you abandon aspirational bodhicitta, there are 19 bodhisattva downfalls in total. And in the Heap of Jewels Sutra, it is said that if you add abandoning engaged bodhicitta, there are 20 bodhisattva offenses in total. In fact, abandoning engaged bodhicitta is also mentioned in the Akashagarbha Sutra. And in the Kandragarbha Sutra, it is also considered a downfall. Abandoning engaged bodhicitta is a downfall. So all these points that we have discussed above, when it comes to Tibetan Buddhism, I should say that our tradition has always been that we follow the views of both Nagarjuna and Asanga. These are the 2 main lineages. When we study the Bodhisattva vow, we must understand them clearly. After taking the Bodhisattva vow, we should check whether we have broken it. We should examine ourselves. It is quite difficult to check whether we have broken any of the subtle Bodhisattva precepts. It can be quite challenging to check. But according to Nagarjuna's 18 precepts and Asanga's 4 precepts, after taking the Bodhisattva vow, you must reflect on whether you have broken them. If you don't reflect, it can be difficult to know. From the perspective of Chinese Buddhism nowadays, there are many great masters who transmit the Bodhisattva vow. This is quite common. Many transmit the vow based on the Brahma's Net Sutra, but in fact, the Brahma's Net Sutra has its own history. At first, Venerable Kumarajiva, a great translator, when 800 people asked him to transmit the Bodhisattva vow, the Sanskrit version was not available at the time, so at that time, Kumarajiva could not transmit it to them. Later, Kumarajiva transmitted the Bodhisattva vow to them orally and established some Bodhisattva precepts. Later, there was a translator named Paramartha who very much wanted to bring the full version of the Brahma's Net Sutra to China. He brought the full version from India. But when he boarded a ship at the South Sea, the ship began to sink under the weight. Even after unloading everything else, it still didn't help. When the Brahma's Net Sutra was left behind, the ship floated and could move again. At that time, he felt very regretful. He said the Bodhisattva vow has no connection with the land of China. How sad. He lamented that the Bodhisattva vow had no conditions to flourish in China and the text was not translated into Chinese. There is such a story. Let's stop here for today.
Jupun Sonen Droa Droa Sho Bandangara Badna Sodargye Bandangara Badna Sodargye Bandangara Badna Sodargye